Hi, I'm Claire Mitchell, QC. Welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast. I'm a lawyer who specialises in miscarriage of justice cases, and we're bringing you this podcast because we want to tell you about the women who were accused, prosecuted, convicted, and ultimately executed as witches in Scotland.
I'm Zoe Venditozzi, and I'm a writer who's always had an interest in the witches, and I feel that this dark mark against Scotland needs a reckoning.
The campaign Witches of Scotland wants three things. Firstly, a pardon for all those convicted of witchcraft. Secondly, an apology for all those who were accused as witches. And finally, a national monument in recognition of all those who are affected by this terrible miscarriage of justice.
Over the forthcoming weeks, we'll be talking to a whole host of experts about the history and the modern day connections to the Witches of Scotland. Hello and welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast. We're now on episode 27, where we'll be talking to Heather Upfield about her research. Before that, though, we would just like to talk about a few different issues that have come up. The first thing is we just want to say thanks for all the support for our International Women's Day event that we had very recently, where we spoke to Sarah Sheridan and we had a fantastic sellout event where there was hundreds of people there on the day, and then people as well have accessed the recording that's available on our website. And then we had the webinar with the Paisley organisation on the Monday on actual International Women's Day. That was amazing. And that's available on, I think, will be available very soon on their YouTube channel. So we'll put links to that. I think at the moment they are subtitling that and making that accessible for everybody. So as soon as we have the links for that, we'll get that up too. But it's really been wonderful. And people, again, on this sort of the hook of International Women's Day, more people have got involved in it and have heard about it through all the different press that we've had. So we just want to say thank you so much for your support, and let's keep it going.
I should say, Zoe, that we have our own YouTube channel, Witches of Scotland. It's only got the poem from Len Penny, aka Lenny Soros, and the International Women's Day thing. But if anyone hasn't seen the International Women's Day event that we did with Sarah Sheridan, we've got the whole episode of that up as well, and the poem. And yeah, it's already had loads of views, so obviously people are coming to it kind of after the event.
Yeah, and we'll be adding more content to that as time goes on, and different things happen with the campaign, basically. Speaking of the campaign, Claire.
Yes, so we are now in a situation where there are about 2,300 people that have signed the petition, and we are absolutely delighted about that. We never really set out with any amount that we wanted to get to, because the petition can go to the Parliament without having any signatures on it. You can simply opt to put it in. But I thought it was a really good idea to ask people whether or not they wanted to be involved in it as well. So we were very excited when the names started appearing in the petition, and it's just been constant really since then, and we're up at 2,300. The petition finishes up on the 17th March, St Patrick's Day, and we think it would be great if we could just get that to 2,500, and that's got a symbolic relevance for us, really.
Yeah, I think it would be really wonderful, because it would obviously tie in with the figure of what we think of as the amount of people that were executed. So I think it'd be really nice if we could do that. And I'd really like to see a push for that in the next few days, in the next week. So yeah, thank you so much.
I think when this podcast's going out, they'll have a day or so. Oh no, they'll have 6 or 7 days to sign it. So if you're one of the people like me who hears a thing and goes, I'm definitely going to do that, it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
And then maybe a week later, it still hasn't happened.
It's still in mental process.
Just think to yourself, when you hear this, I'm definitely going to do it, and I'm going to do it now, because...
And honestly, it's so quick. Like it takes no time. I know people always say that to you, and then you have to go through sort of 7 Jason and the Argonaut type events to get to the finish line. But it actually is really quick. It's very, very quick. And I don't think you have to give any serious detail or anything like that to it. No. So it would be great. Please do sign. Please do tell people that don't use social media as well, because, amazingly, there are people that do not lose chunks of their day to social media. So it would be helpful if they know as well. So thank you so much. We've been contacted as well by one of our tremendous listeners So that's somebody called Lillian Evans, who gets in touch with us from America. She's really great, a big supporter. We'd been talking about what widdershins meant, and we've talked about this before in the past, that sometimes these words come up, sort of quite archaic Scots words, that we are not entirely sure what they mean.
Yeah,
and ponder a bit about it.
Yeah, because it was said in one or two of the accusations that have come up that they were practicing widdershins or involved in widdershins. We were like, okay, we're having wild guesses at this.
I had a vague memory that it was anti-clockwise, which has been borne out by Lillian. So she's got in touch and has written the following. So I'm just going to read out what she wrote to us. I don't know the origin of the word widdershins, but it does mean anti-clockwise. And before we had clocks, but often did have sundials, it meant and means against the sun or anti-sunwise as far as its usage. To turn or walk a circle sunwise in the direction of the sun, yes, even though we know the Earth goes around the sun, it seems to travel the sky around us and moon, is a good thing, as in east then south then west then north. I've seen the Gaelic word diesel used for this. It's the way of the sun, the moon, the seasons, and the passage of time and life. To walk or turn widdershins is to go anti-sunwise in direction, and has been more often than not used in cursing or wishing ill luck on someone or something, or binding them, for better or worse, in a ritual, a spell, with some exceptions, of course. To some, in cases of trying to heal by way of ritual, to conduct oneself physically turning widdershins is not cursing, but going backward in time, imagining back to before a person was hurt, an accident, or a sorrow, nor is turning widdershins in regular dance usually regarded as ill-wishing. But we can kind of extrapolate with the idea about widdershins with reference to the witches and conduct with the devil and, with the dances and the movements and so on, that this is sort of going against God's plan there, as Lillian's kind of described it as being the natural way of things, that if you're going against that, then it's unnatural and therefore in league with the devil. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I personally, as a writer and English teacher, love this. I love stuff about what words mean and what they used to mean and change over time and so on. So I find that very fascinating.
I think we should definitely bring widdershins back, just to mean going round in the wrong direction.
I'm going to start using it.
You've gone round that roundabout, widdershins, as all the cars come crashing to a halt.
Well, I've been teaching kids recently, or I'm going to use the word teaching very loosely, some first-year kids, how to tell the time on a clock face, because they can't do it these days. My own children are rubbish at telling the time on a clock face because they just look at their phones and it tells them. Yeah. And they know if it's day or night. So clock face usage is definitely on the decline. I'm going to start saying to them now, if I was to turn these hands widdershins, and that'll just add another level of confusion to the sorry state of me trying to explain how time works, which is my explanation is just like, it just does, okay? That's why it's that. Anyway, moving on. Thank you so much, Lillian. It's really helpful, and we love you getting in touch. It's great, and we really enjoy the fact that we wake up in the morning and sometimes there's a message from you because of our time lag. So we're glad that you're enjoying the campaign, and thank you so much for your support. So as ever, we're now going to go on to look at 3 people who were accused as witches. And the first one we're going to look at, Claire, you're going to do that one, aren't you?
Yeah, what I was going to say was I looked at researching these particular ones, and I feel these are particularly sad because these are cases where it was said that the inverted commas witches' malice, close inverted commas, was being refused charity when they'd asked for it. So effectively what happens is a poor old woman, as it usually would be, a poor woman would ask for charity, ask for alms in the form of shelter, in the form of food, and were refused it. And because they were refused it, the idea was that they would place a spell on the person who had refused them charity, and some ill would befall them. So not only were these women not getting the help they needed when they asked for food or for lodgings, accommodation, but then they were being accused of witchcraft because the person that had refused them had become ill or suspected them of putting them under a spell for having refused charity. So it's just a horrible, horrible situation for these women to have been in.
Can I just ask a question then, Claire, just to clarify, because I find that quite a hard concept to get my head around. So somebody could be accused of witchcraft because they came and knocked on my door. I said no, and then say my cat died. And I would say that old wifey that I turned away and that I was horrible to and that I didn't give any help to has then made this terrible thing happen in my life and therefore is a witch.
That's exactly right. Do you remember when we spoke with Catherine McPhee in our earlier podcast about the gentleman, about the old woman that had come to his door and had been turned away.
On Skye.
On Skye, exactly. That was exactly a case in point. She'd come to his door asking for help, and then he blamed his ills upon her. It's just an incredible psychological process where you know that you've done something wrong by someone. I've done something wrong by that old woman by not helping her, by not giving her food. And I mean, not in all cases were people bountiful with food or ability themselves. This is maybe poor people asking poor people. But knowing that somebody has come to you and asked for charity, and what you've done is turned it away, then to think that anything bad that happens to you is because they've cursed you for turning them away. It's a really, really sad story. So the first woman we want to talk to you about today is a woman called Margaret Watson. She was accused twice, once in 1708 and once in 1725. Now, as you'll know, those dates, certainly the last one, is very close to the end of the Witchcraft Act in 1736. So it may have been by that time views on witchcraft were changing somewhat. What we know in relation to the second allegation is that she asked for charity and was refused it. She'd asked for lodgings for a place to stay. Later, the women of the house who had refused her lodgings took bad dreams, and it was said she was out of her wits. And therefore, because she had bad dreams and was out of her wits, she blamed the woman that had been turned away for charity, Margaret Watson. Margaret was accused of being a witch. She was taken in, and she was subject to cross-examination and examination as to whether or not she was a witch, and she denied being a witch. In 1725, the investigator found there was nothing that would infer the crime of witchcraft, but concluded that she was what was described as a deluder of the people. Now, I've no idea really what that is. It sounds like some form of general fraud, and I'm not sure what that can be, but thankfully she wasn't convicted of the crime of witchcraft, which was alleged, and therefore we know that she wasn't executed for witchcraft. But just a horrible story of a woman needing help, not getting it, and then further being accused of witchcraft. So the second person we want to talk to you about is Janet Rendell. She was a woman accused as a witch in Orkney. She went to trial in Kirkwall on the 11th November 1629. The Survey of Scottish Witchcraft says almost all the accusations against her concerned mumbling and perceived harm after people refused to give her alms. I mean, think how tragic that is, Zoe. A woman asking for help is refused, and when she didn't get it, people blamed their ills upon her. Because she'd been refused charity, this provided her with a motive for cursing people. It's just mind-bendingly awful.
What does it mean, mumbling?
I think it actually means exactly as it says, just like muttering.
And there was an assumption that she was maybe cursing them under her breath, like literally cursing them under her breath.
Yeah. I think that's what it sounds like. She confessed, and she said she called the devil Wally Man and claimed that he taught her to heal so that people would give her alms. He also taught her to harm those who had refused to give alms. And of course, her accusers would have been accusing her of that, so she knew exactly what she had to confess to in order to get them to stop torturing her. She was asked also clearly about what clothes the devil was wearing. You'll remember, Zoe, we had the devil dressed in black in Scotland, red in Catalonia, and here she describes the devil as wearing white clothes with a white head and a grey beard. So we know that she was accused of witchcraft. We know that it was because someone had failed to give her alms and believed that as a result of that, she had cursed them. But sadly, there is no record of the outcome of the case of Janet Rendell.
Sad.
Who else have we got today, Zoe?
Our third person is Janet Hairstains. This again was a woman who was poor. It appeared that she was a beggar asking for alms, and the record notes that she was asking for food. After being accused of being a witch in May 1699, she took voluntary banishment from Dumfries. I mean, to take voluntary when you've already got nothing, it's just completely crazy.
So what that happened was she basically it was like a diversion from prosecution in the modern day. And rather than going to trial, she voluntarily left the area. So you're talking about a starving woman being banished from the area that she lived.
That's crazy. Well, she reappeared in the Kirkcudbright area in 1708 and was brought for trial. After trial, she was put under caution. We think this means warned, and it perhaps shows the change in view that people were coming around to the idea that witchcraft wasn't real. That's quite interesting. And it brings us on to this idea again about an apology as opposed to a pardon. So, Claire, could you explain again the relevance of those two terms with our campaign?
Yes, again, pardons can only be given to those who have been convicted of offences. And poor Janet Hairstains is one of the people who wasn't convicted, it would appear, on the first occasion. And on the second occasion, something happened which meant she received a warning rather than being put to death as we would have expected if she'd been convicted of witchcraft. So it's for someone like Janet that we want an apology, because she might not be caught by the pardon. So we just want an apology to ensure that she is also covered and she hasn't missed out by only getting an apology for those that were convicted. We might talk a bit more actually about apologies in one of our forthcoming podcasts and have a bit of a conversation between us, because people have been asking, is it appropriate to give a pardon in these circumstances? And that's quite a big question, and we've got a lot to talk about. So maybe it'd be a good idea in the future, Zoe, if we have a chat about that.
Yeah, because there's a legal dimension to this that isn't just straightforward, necessarily common sense. Like, we need to talk about that a wee bit more.
Are you trying to say that my law isn't common sense, Zoe? Legal?
No, I'm saying the very opposite of that, Claire Mitchell QC. I'm saying that because you know about the law, you can explain it in a way that makes sense, that it's not just a straightforward, these people were pure people that just need like a blanket, they were fine. Life is complex, and what we're talking about here is very, very specifically about what the people were accused and or convicted of. So I think we need to talk about that in more depth. I think that would be really useful. So I think you're right. Let us revisit that at another point.
We shall.
You see. Now, we're now going to go on to talk to Heather Upfield, who has written a fantastic book called The 5 Women of Kilwinning that we've mentioned before in the show. So she's going to talk to us about them there. And these were 5 women who were victims of the Great Scottish Witch Hunt in the 17th century. The most famous of the accused being Bessie Graham, who was imprisoned in the old Abbey Bell Tower before being tried and eventually executed. And we're going to hear a lot more about that from Heather Upfield. So without any further ado, welcome Heather to the show.
Welcome, Heather Upfield, to Witches of Scotland. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thank you.
And the reason that we got in contact with you was because I firstly saw your work on the Women of Kilwinning. You wrote a book, a sort of booklet, a pamphlet about the Women of Kilwinning, and I ordered that book and got it and read it from cover to cover, found it fascinating. And I was wondering, first of all, if you could tell the listeners what got you interested in the question of witchcraft and allegations of witchcraft in your local area?
Right. Well, we have a very elderly lady in Kilwinning whose name is Dorothy, and I won't say more than that. She's now 99, and for many years she has been saying that there was a connection with Bessie Graham and the tower of the ruins of Kilwinning Abbey. Now, sadly, over the years, various chairmen of various committees didn't really take it seriously. But for time to time, it comes up again with Dorothy, and she'll get in touch with the provost and her local MP and the MSP and everybody in between. And the chairman, the current chairman of Kilwinning Heritage, and I'm on the committee of Kilwinning Heritage, he asked me if I would do some digging into Bessie Graham and see whether what Dorothy had said had any veracity. So this was in June of last year, and I was really glad to do that. I just published a book through Kilwinning Heritage on the clocks and clockmakers of Kilwinning. So I was delighted to have another project to do, and it was amazing. Once I got started and discovered that we had 5 women, not just Bessie Graham, And I got so involved in the stories of these women, as much as we know about them. And I feel I'm now an activist with the group, and I want to do as much as I can for these most unfortunate women who had such a horrendous life and death, and it affected me very deeply. And also, I have to say that I was doing it in support of Dorothy, who for 20 years or so, to my knowledge, had been trying to get the word out. So I was doing it for her too.
And what did your research, how did you go about doing it? Was it easy to find information, or was it a really big laborious task?
No, because once I got on to the Scottish witchcraft database, then I found it easy enough to get the names of the 5 women, to get a wee bit of extra information that we didn't have before. And then through the Facebook group, Remembering the Accused Witches of Scotland, I made links with various people who gave me further information. And I found the whole thing was a collaboration, really, between me and the Facebook group and what I'd found on the database. And it all helped to build up the picture.
I think that's one really nice aspect of this that Claire and I have found, is that it's such a collaborative, collegiate approach that people have. There's people from all over Scotland that have an interest, that are sharing bits of info, and people are really kind, I think, and are really sort of positively driven. Yeah.
Yeah. And I find that at my age, I can encourage some of the younger ones now. I'm not being patronizing when I say, and some of them who say, well, I've not written anything before, and just giving them that wee bit of courage to get it down, and some of the tweaks they could make as well.
Yeah. And do you have a history? Do you have like a history background? Were you a teacher? Like, what's your background that's led you to this sort of research?
Well, I've always had an interest in history. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I retired was to do a postgraduate degree in Scottish medieval history at Glasgow. And it would have been feasible when I first started thinking about it. But by the time I actually retired in 2013, the fees had gone up to about £10,000, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just completely out of the question. I wasn't going to mortgage my house for that. But I've had an interest in history. I'm something of a blue stocking, really, I would say. I've taught in various universities, not on history, but on other subjects. Believe it or not, I actually taught communication studies to physiotherapists in Edinburgh, Queen Margaret University. So I was in higher education for 20 plus years. So the whole research thing and an academic approach is kind of the way I do things.
We've mentioned your booklet a number of times before, but if people want to get the booklet, where do they go to?
Right, well, it's available from Kilwinning Heritage website, but I didn't broadcast it widely because we had to get help with printing. We're a very small heritage group, and it was North Ayrshire Council who paid for the printing. And they printed off 100 copies for us, which was absolutely lovely. But I thought if I were to sort of advertise it widely and 1,000 people responded, then, you know, there would be problems for us. So I made it known to various people like the admins in the group. And Zoe, I'd be happy to send you one if you'd like one. But what I did do was I put together a spreadsheet of everything that I could find on all the people in North Ayrshire who had been involved in the witchcraft trials and accusations. And then I spread that out into the whole of Ayrshire. So these 2 spreadsheets with as much information as I could find It's not in depth, I have to say, not like the 5 women, but those 2 spreadsheets are available on the files section of the Facebook group. So anyone can delve into those. But I think for the time being, unless we get some more funding for printing, then it has to be kind of on a limited basis. And that's just one
Are
of the
there
problems.
library copies? Do you have copies in the libraries there?
Will do once the libraries are open.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
So everything's really at a standstill at the moment.
Yeah.
But what we're hoping to do in the Kilwinning Heritage is to reopen sometime over the summer, and we'll push the books again then. And at that point, we might be able to pay for more copies.
And that's not the only thing that you've done in connection with promoting the story of women that were killed as witches. Tell us your most recent success.
Right. Well, now this was getting a street named after Bessie Graham in Kilwinning. And I would love to be able to say that I chained myself to the council doors until they got a name for a road. It didn't happen like that. It was back in the beginning of December of last year when a local councillor put out a message on the Kilwinning Facebook page to say that there's a new housing development that was under construction, and they were looking for names for streets in this new development. And anyone who wanted to nominate someone, they had to send a name with a brief history of why they should be included. So I immediately fired off Bessie Graham. I mean, who wouldn't? With a little justification.
Actually, you say who wouldn't, but I mean, nobody else has. Certainly nobody is here.
And then within our circle, it would be the first thing you do. So I sent this off to the councillor and didn't think any more about it until I got a message from him in, I think it was either the end of January or the beginning of February, to say that Bessie Graham had been chosen. And there was now going to be a Bessie Graham court in this new development. Now, who made that decision? I'm not absolutely certain. It wasn't North Ayrshire Council. It's possibly Kilwinning Community Council. That's what I'm trying to think of. So who actually ticked the box and said, yes, I'm not sure. But I was just over the moon. But I do think it's slightly ironic, and I had a wee laugh to myself. We have Bessie Graham Court, but sadly the courts were never very kind to Bessie at the time. So there is a kind of irony going on there. But yes, the houses are being built. I have a plan from the house builders to show exactly where this street will be. And depending on how much the houses cost, I might even buy a house up there.
That would be taking your activism to a great extreme. That would be
It would. I don't know if it's a wee bit OTT. I mean, they might be sort of 5-bedroomed houses at £350,000 or something, which would be slightly out of my bracket.
And did Dorothy get to know about this?
Well, yes. Now, the first thing I did when I heard from the councillor that Bessie Graham had been chosen was I did phone Dorothy and tell her. But during February, the local councillor decided to do a little piece for the local paper. And he phoned me and said, would it be okay if we add Dorothy's name in there as well? And I said, that would be absolutely fine. She's nearly 100. She deserves that recognition as well.
Brilliant.
So he wrote up a little piece and sent it to the Ardrossan and Thorpecotes Herald, and their reporter, I think, did a wee bit of tinkering with the text. She certainly has the byline, but it's there for all to see, yes.
Brilliant.
So,
And that's been shared on social media already, but we'll put up another link to it so people can read. I think there's a photograph of it already online.
I put that up in the group, yes.
Brilliant.
That's
okay,
great.
we'll certainly find that and put a link up again. So do you think you'll do this again? Now that you've had success once, do you think you'll do that again?
In what respect?
In looking to see if there are any more developments and putting in names, because it certainly sparked an interest with me and Zoe when we saw it.
Well, I don't know if there'll be anything else in Kilwinning coming up, but I would certainly say to anyone in the group that, I mean, houses are going up in all the towns,
Mm-hmm.
and see if you can get someone named in your own town.
Wouldn't that be a great thing if across Scotland, across the nation, there was these streets that then named by these, women and some men that, that they were then marked? That would be really amazing, I think.
Oh, Heather,
Yes.
I hope you've started an activist campaign there.
Well, it might trend. You never know. But that's how I would encourage people. Yes.
Well,
If somebody was to ask, sorry, Claire, if somebody was to ask, they were keen to do this sort of research themselves, do you have any top tips for what people should do if they want to look in their own area?
Well, I can't do anything without spreadsheets. I was known as the Queen of Excel at work because so much of my work was done in Excel. But I find it's the best way of storing information. You can get all your columns with principal dates, the year, name, surname, and also a column for any notes that you pick up on the way. And then you can sort it as you go, and you can get it all in year order or location order. So I would say that keeping a spreadsheet of some sort is a good way, but also always keep a notebook. Write down everything that you do in a notebook, particularly if you're going to be using texts, because texts have to be referenced and cited in the correct way. And I've learned from experience of way back over the years of not writing down the details of a book and the page number at the time. And then you're having to compile your reference list at the end, and you find that you've got to read through all these books and texts all over again to find the one paragraph. So I just use notebook after notebook for every new subject that I'm involved in. I had one for my clocks and clockmakers, which I filled solely with that. I had one for my witchcraft. So I've got all these notebooks for all the various things that I've done. So keep records, always keep records as you go, because you don't remember things. Once you turn off your laptop and go off and do something, it goes out of your head.
Well, I really, really look forward to the court going up and to coming one day when we're allowed out of our house once again to the court and seeing it actually being in the street would be absolutely amazing. Yeah. So that's something we'd really love to do in the future. Perhaps see you there, Heather.
Oh, yes, and come to Kilwinning Abbey, because the ruins of the Abbey are right in the town centre, and that is where Bessie Graham was imprisoned. In the ruins. So although the tower that she was imprisoned in, although it was the original tower from the medieval abbey, which stood until 1814, she was imprisoned in the old tower, which got struck by lightning. So the tower that's there dates to 1816, but it was built on the footprint of the old tower that she was imprisoned in.
So that was the actual space that you can still go to and visit?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Could you give us a little history of Bessie herself so that the listeners can know what we know of her story?
Right. It's very difficult because there are various old tales and stories that she lived by the river Garnock in a little cottage, and that she was quite a cantankerous old dear who fell out with her neighbours. But how much truth there is in that story, we don't know. A lot of it is fable, so we're not absolutely sure. But what we do know is that at some point she did have a row with a neighbour, and his wife died 10 days later. So somebody reported this to the local minister, who was James Ferguson at the time. So he picked up on this. It was his job, get these dangerous people. He had her locked in the old Abbey Tower, but we're not sure whether it was up the tower or down the tower. There was some confusion about that. And he went in to get her confession, but she never did confess. She never made any confession to witchcraft at all. He employed a pricker who came along and stuck needles in her. And again, that wasn't conclusive enough for Minister Ferguson. But on one occasion, he went with the bellman, that's the old term for the town crier. And again, he tried to get a confession. But as they were coming away and leaving her in the cell or the dungeon, they heard what they thought were demonic voices. Now, this surely was poor Bessie, who must have been driven insane by being locked up in the tower, with, of course, the tower bell, which would be ringing from time to time. And the noise of that, if you've ever been in a tower where the bell has rung, is horrendous. So she was probably driven mad in some respects, but they assumed that this was Bessie talking to the devil, and there was no going back after that. That was enough proof, as far as they were concerned, these men, that she was guilty. And then the Earl of Eglinton, who was one of the High Hedians, he eventually signed the papers to get her formally arrested and sent to trial in Irvine. And again, a long list of male investigators were brought in. And sadly, she was found guilty and suffered the fate of that, strangulation and burning, which was the method at the time. Now, whether that happened in Irvine, which is 2 miles from Kilwinning, or whether she was brought back to Kilwinning, burnt on Corsill Muir in Kilwinning, we don't actually know. Now, I live on the side of Corsill, so if she was burnt on Corsill Muir, that would just be at the top of the road as far as I'm concerned. So I have a little garden shrine, which I've had ever since I moved in here 20 years ago. And over the summer, I'll be planting it out as a wee memorial to our Bessie.
Oh, how lovely. That's so beautiful. And not only have you highlighted her name, not only have you got your own memorial, but you've got a court, which I'm sure people moving in and people around will think, I wonder what that woman was. I wonder why it was named after her, and keep her name alive that way as well. And I hope it does them well to remember to have good relationships with their neighbours. That's one thing in that court.
Absolutely, yes. Very important, yes.
Well, we just want to thank you so much for coming to speak to us and telling us about your great success, both in bringing the stories of these women back to life again in a way that people can read about, and also the tremendous work that you've done to do that. Even if I had seen that in the papers, I don't think I would have even thought of it. You know, it wouldn't have crossed my mind. But now that you've done it, it's a brilliant idea. Maybe other people will follow in your footsteps.
I think that's what I really like, is that you're obviously acting as a person that other people are going, oh, right, well, I'll go and look that up for my area now. And, you know, as a teacher, I just love that. I love the fact that other people are getting engaged with these interesting areas and doing their own research. I think it's wonderful. So well done. I think it's a great job you're doing.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. And I really appreciate you getting in touch with me and allowing me to ramble on a bit about my Essie and my other women. I like to be in a position where I'm sparking things off in other people. And I hope that other people do pick up on some of the things that I've done and get confidence that, oh, hey, I can do that too. And that's what it's all about for me.
Well, you've definitely done it. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the Witches of Scotland podcast. We've only got a few days left for the signing of the petition, so please, please, please go and sign the petition if you haven't already, and please tell people about it that you think might be interested. Even tell those people who you think might not be interested. They might surprise you. And that'd be really great to get more signatures. Claire?
Yeah, just sign. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks very much.
We're never
not
seeing you.
Them, but we can imagine them.
We do.
I imagine a lot of people going, yes, in front of their computers. Certainly not them again. But anyway, thanks so much for joining us. You'll be hearing from us again.
You will.
Okay, Day.
Bye.
That's a wrap.
That is a wrap.
Right, okay.
If you'd like to learn more about the Witches of Scotland, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for our mailing list at www.witchesofscotland.com to keep updated with the campaign. On that site, you'll be able to find how to link with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.